Welcome to another episode of Women Leaders, Tales, Trails, and Truths, where we uncover the inspiring stories, journeys, and insights of successful women leaders. Join us each month as we explore the paths that they've taken, the challenges they've overcome, and the truths that they've discovered along the way. So whether you're here for a little bit of inspiration, guidance, or a deeper understanding of what it takes to lead, you're in the right place. So let's dive into this episode. Before becoming a university registrar in 2016, our guest navigated complex leadership challenges across law, the civil service, and government, proving that true leadership is less about the sector and more about the person leading. That's why I'm so excited that we are joined in the Warwick Innovation District studio by Rachel Sandby-Thomas. She is the University of Warwick's Registrar, a former Director General, and has been recognized in the FTSE 100 Women to Watch and the Times 100 Most Influential Lawyers. Rachel, a very warm welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Could you tell us in about a sentence what the Registrar of a university does? I mean, I did hear you say once that it's heading up the non-academic kind of parts of the university.
Yeah, and that is the kind of high-level truth. So when I first asked the VC before I applied, he said, if I'm coming back on a plane and something goes wrong on the academic side, I phone the provost. And if it's going wrong on the non-academic side, I phone you. So obviously it's not a complete truth. So if it's something, financial, he will phone Rosie Drinkwater, the group financial director. He will phone other people with their expertise. But if something needs to be sorted out, or it's within one of my many areas that report directly to me, then he will phone me. So it's a high-level truth.
Let's just go into your career a little bit.
Yeah.
What was the first moment you realized that you were a leader and not just a professional?
So, I've thought about this. I don't think I ever did have a kind of a moment of realization. I think it was one of those things that, I don't know, when I started life off at Linklaters in the private sector. And I've always been somebody who observes quite a lot. I kind of watch. And I used to watch some of the things that went on and think, why? Why would you do that? Why did you do it? What did you expect? So I've always kind of thought about these things. And then, just when I then changed into government legal service and I kind of went up and again watching, and I just always assumed that at some stage that I would manage and lead a team. And I always kind of wanted to do it when I felt ready and the time was right. And then I remember being sent off. So in the government legal service generally, certainly at that time, you reached the senior civil service, became a deputy director, and that's when you had a team. And I had been a couple of months into it, and I got sent off to a fabulous 2-week residential leadership course called Developing Top Management at Sunningdale. And it was brilliant. But I kept everything they were kind of saying to me. I was thinking, yeah, I know, yeah, I know, yeah. And then I started getting really worried because I started thinking, well, maybe I'm just not getting it. Maybe I'm just not getting it. And it was only really afterwards when we were being asked for feedback and they provided a bit of feedback that had previously been given. And somebody said it was a brilliant course because it reaffirmed all my natural leadership instincts. And I thought, aha, that's it. That's it. That's exactly what it did. So it kind of gave me the confidence to follow my instincts.
And that's exactly what I was thinking. I think you just had it in you and you knew perhaps you had it in you. And it wasn't until maybe that moment where you thought, yeah, this is all comes natural to me.
Well,
it's fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, there's obviously various aspects of leadership and some come more naturally than others. But I just always kind of thought that I would.
So you started your career as a lawyer and you worked for one of the most prestigious law firms in London. What truth about professional growth do you wish someone had told you early in your career?
Well, I kind of worked it out for myself, but it probably is, and I think it's even more true now than it was then, that it's not necessarily going to be linear. Albeit my career has been relatively linear, but, I kind of moved from Linklaters and moved into the government legal service and then did lots and lots of jobs in there. Also, the fact that if you apply for something and you don't get it, it is not the end of the world. It is that thing, one door closes, another one opens. And that actually it just meant that it wasn't the right thing for you and don't let it dent your confidence. Don't take it as a setback, because it's not a setback. It's just another stage on your road. And because I didn't get the first deputy director job that I went for, and I was kind of completely gutted that I didn't get it. But in fact, actually, the job I did get in the end was a much, much better job and worked out much better. But don't let it dent your confidence.
And I love how you just kind of came to that realization on your own. And sometimes you just have to go through that process of being really upset about something, and then, to kind of work through those feelings or emotions.
I still don't like rejection. I still don't like it if I, apply for something and I don't get it. I don't even like it if I do get it, but I don't think that I did a very good interview or process or anything like that. I still don't like it. But, you just have to put your big girl pants on and get on with it.
I agree completely. So how did your transition from lawyer to civil servant kind of challenge your understanding of leadership?
So again, I don't think it did really. So I joined the civil service as a lawyer. So I was kind of as a lawyer, obviously kind of a very different culture, but actually I was doing more law, so it was a brilliant move, and the people that I was working with were lovely, super bright, but very nice as well. And actually, they liked the fact that I had a personality, whereas I've been seen a bit iffy in the city. And again, I went up the leadership route in law. And it was only when I'd become Director General for Legal in the Department for Business, which, had always been one of the great big stonking leadership roles in law. People used to see my predecessor and they go, "Oh my God, look over there, there's the solicitor to the TTI." Anyway, so that eventually became me. I don't think anybody was doing that. And then we had a merger of departments, and my boss at the time, who was fabulous, Simon Fraser, who was the permanent secretary, so heading up the department, then said, "Oh, well, actually, you can do lots and lots of other stuff as well. You're quite useful, really. So why don't you take on half of the corporate services?" So I became DG Legal People and Comms, and I did that for about 2 years, which involved restructuring the department and reducing it by 25%, which was no mean feat, and certainly was a huge leadership challenge. And then they said, "Oh, well, you can do that now. So why don't you take on this great big policy role?" So I became DG Business and Skills. But what everybody tended to forget was I still was DG Legal. So I still had the great big whopping huge job, but I used to call it like the baby on my hip. So I'd say it's fine. So I go on doing this ginormous policy job, which previously had been done by 2 DGs and my third day. So I was literally doing 3 DGs roles, obviously only getting paid as 1 DG. But anyway, so I would have my legal team, who were fabulous, absolutely fabulous. But they were my baby on the hip. So everything was fine. I could go around doing all the policy stuff as long as the baby was fine. But if the baby got tonsillitis or something, then that was a bit of a strain, because obviously it needed attention as well as the other stuff. But I know that when I first became DG Business and Skills, I never used to mention to the businessmen, very, very senior execs that I was meeting. And I didn't hide, but I didn't bring forth the fact that I was a lawyer, because I thought that they would think I was like an imposter, because, what's a lawyer doing in this space? And I did that for about a year. And then suddenly I thought, what are you doing? What are you doing? Stupid, absolutely stupid. Because actually, that's not what they would think. Probably what they would think is, oh, you're kind of bright, you've had really good training, blah, blah, blah. They wouldn't be thinking that negative connotation, which I had superimposed on myself. And so I stopped at that. And I'm very open about the fact I'm a lawyer. In fact, very proud.
I would be too.
I know, it was stupid. It was completely stupid.
I don't know if it was stupid or not, but
it was
there was so much to unpack in what you just said. I mean, that no mean feat of reducing, was it 25%?
Yes. That was huge.
That sounds like quite a challenge. How did you get through that?
Well, that was one of the toughest leadership challenges. So I basically got through it by thinking that somebody was going to have to do it. And I would rather do it myself than see somebody else do it badly or in a way that I didn't think was fair and right. So in fact, we did it in a completely innovative, unconventional way, which had never been done like that before. I don't think it's been done like that afterwards. But basically what happened was we kind of worked out by the time we went through estates and we went through all the commercial options, we had savings still to make. This was in the wake of austerity. We had savings to make, which equated to about 450 people, which was 25% of the workforce. And my boss, who's the Prime Secretary by that time, a chap called Martin Donnelly, and he stood up at an all-staff event on the 13th of January and told everybody that we were going to have to do a redundancy scheme. We hadn't worked out the details yet, but he would tell everybody by the end of the month how we were going to do it, and everybody would know by Easter whether they were in or out. And Easter was the 21st of April. Now, given the fact that we had to consult with the trade unions for 90 days, it actually seemed a complete impossibility, but he had committed to it. So it's like, over to you, Rachel. You need to work out how to do it. So it's like, oh my God. Anyway, we did do it, and we were lucky enough to have a kind of a room in the department which had whiteboards on either side. So I kind of watched HR kind of struggling with this, and we were already a week into the 2 weeks, and they still didn't have a plan. They still didn't know how to do it because it did seem impossible. So I pulled everybody together, got them down to the whiteboards to have a brainstorm. We were still struggling with it, all the things that we had to do. And actually, it was one of the grade 7s who was one of the most junior people in the room who said the thing which created the brainwave. And actually, we did it in waves. That's how we did it. And there was absolutely no margin of risk. So it was completely hairy. But the other thing I did as well was that I was kind of fed up with redundancy schemes, which are what I call kind of musical chairs, where somebody happens to be sitting in the wrong seat. So actually, you kind of, you lose the wrong person because you're doing it by seat. So I didn't do it like that. I devised it so that we had pools of people, so that we had all the policy folks, we had all the lawyers, we had all this kind of specialists, and they were in their own pools, and people had to choose what pool they were going to be in. And then we already had lots of building blocks in place, like assessments in the past, and we used a mixture of things. We did skills tests, we did looking at previous, PDRs, as we would call them, all of that kind of stuff. So there were about 4 different elements which we put together, and we kind of vigorously tested. So it was completely fair. It wasn't to do with posts, it was to do with people and their talents. And it was very fast, which did cause quite a lot of grief in the department. But I kind of felt it was the best process that it could have been in the circumstances. And that's what kept me going, even though it was super tough.
Wow, that's really impressive. What a story. And I mean, I'm just thinking at the very beginning, you said I felt like I had to do it. I mean, I think that accountability is such an amazing leadership skill. So that's...
Yeah. Well, so I kind of think of it more like kind of mental tricks. If you have something or you're going through something that is really hard, how do you find the resilience to do it? And what I kind of find myself, or kind of looking back doing, is trying to find something which kind of gives you a purpose or a reason or an attachment to get through it. So at one stage I was working in HMRC, which I won't go on about because I could bore you for a bit on it because I could write a book about it. But it was difficult, and every single solitary aspect of it was difficult. So I had to find something to kind of latch onto in a way to keep going. And actually what I thought was I needed to keep on going because of all the grade 7s and 6s who were kind of not in line management, because I kind of thought of them kind of like children who needed to be rescued. I don't mean that to sound patronizing, but they needed help, and they needed to be got out from under the kind of the layer where they were, and kind of help to be their best selves. So once I got that into my head, that would give me the kind of extra juice to keep going.
Yeah, you felt almost responsible.
Yeah, I did.
That might be a better word. And you also said something about working with great people, and I've heard you say how lucky you've been working with great people, giving you opportunities.
Yes.
What would you say to our listeners who perhaps haven't been so lucky? I mean, how could women get more support, advice to get more opportunities?
Yeah. You go and find somebody else who will. Go and find, if you are in, most of the people who helped me were probably my line managers, their direct line management. I think I've only ever had one bad line manager in my career. So I have been very lucky from that point of view, albeit I learned a lot from him as well. And actually, he did give me opportunities as well, even though he was, lacking in other aspects of leadership and management. But I kind of think if you either get yourself out of the situation, if you're kind of in that no-win situation and you're not growing, then you need to move on. Or if you can't do that for whatever reason at the time, you just look around you, because there are loads of people around, all of whom would help. And it doesn't just have to be in that kind of vertical silo. You can skedaddle across to the sides and go and find other people to help. Mm-hmm. And they can be within the organisation, or they can be without the organisation. Or, you can apply to be a trustee of a charity or something, because that, again, will teach you other skills. You just look for other opportunities to try and kind of supplement and augment what you're doing at the time.
Yeah, great advice. I was thinking about a quote that you picked up from a recent session at Warwick. Busy is the new lazy.
Yeah.
What does that mean? And can you tell us what that is?
Yeah, so I only heard it last week, and it really made me pause for thought. It's akin to that thing, there's no such fool as a busy fool. So the thought is that, it's very easy to keep yourself busy and fool yourself that you're being productive. But actually, giving yourself time to think and reflect is just as important as the activity that you're undertaking. And I was recently listening to a podcast which was talking about the way that AI is going to affect how we do stuff. And, essentially what it was saying was that, as we move more and more into AI, it's actually the human value is going to be the value of ideas and great ideas. And you don't normally get those ideas through being busy for the sake of it. You get it when you allow your kind of brain to kind of, operate and flow. And very often it'll be like a walk, a dog walk. I mean, I get my best ideas in my Saturday morning shower. That's because obviously my brain has had a good night's sleep the night before. I'm not at work, and things occur to me, which, otherwise I would have been too busy during the week to do.
So what do you do? Yeah. Do you go and you jot it down on a piece of paper?
Yeah. So funny enough, the Friday email that I do,
I'll talk about that.
Yeah. Well, that was a Saturday morning shower. That was a Saturday morning shower. I was
going to ask you how that came about.
Yeah, that's how it came about. So
great idea.
Well, I'd become DG Business and Skills, and at that stage I had about 630 people, spurious accuracy, working for me. So prior to that, when I'd been DG Legal, because I'd been a director in the department, I kind of knew everybody in the legal department, and they knew me, and so it was easy to kind of walk around and chat to them, and I would do kind of a weekly coffee and chat thing. And then when I became DG People and Comms, I already knew quite a lot of the HR people and the comms people quite a bit, just through lots of stuff I've been doing in the department. But when I became DG Business and Skills, I didn't know lots and lots of the policy people, and there's 600 of them. So I'm not going to get to know each of them. And, it's going to be very difficult to do that walking of the floor thing, which, I kind of feel a bit uncomfortable with anyway. So I had been racking my brains about how can I be visible as a leader if I never see them. Anyway, so I was in the shower and bing! I thought, well, why don't I just tell them about what I'm up to? And I'll write it myself, so in my voice. And then hopefully they will kind of get to know me a bit, as well as kind of get to know what I'm up to. So that's where it came.
Okay, well, you answered that question, but I've talked to several colleagues. We all just love that Friday email. But before we move on, I do want to go back to that, what you mentioned about the new lazy. How do you make time for yourself? I mean, you're very busy.
Yeah.
So, and it's really important to think, just put some time in your calendar to think so you can have these ideas.
Yeah.
But what's your top tip to do that?
Well, So there's two things. So I don't put time on my calendar to think because my brain doesn't work like that.
Okay.
It's only when I give it some kind of space, and normally but I'm not kind of, I'm not saying right thoughts come to me, because they won't come to me. If I do, my brain tends to freeze. I try, but it's much, much harder to do it here, even than it was in government. I try to put some protect time in my diary. My ideal is a 2-hour slot each day where it's my time. So if I want to go for a walk around campus or previously St. James's Park, I can. I never actually did use it to walk St. James's Park, but it was knowing that I could. So it's my time. And that might just be going for a coffee with somebody. It might be whatever it is. And just having that little bit of space. So again, normally my best thoughts come unbidden, but it's just because I've given my brain a bit of a rest. I'm not applying it to something in particular. We used to have 2 dogs, in fact, both of whom sadly now have died. Mm-hmm. So I don't do dog walks anymore, but dog walks used to be a great way of doing it. Otherwise, I do carve lots of time for myself. I love reading. I'm very sociable, so I, see friends a lot. But again, they tend to spark ideas, because when I'm kind of chatting to somebody and they say something, it'll spark an idea, and it's like, aha, ha, ha, right. Just that kind of making connections in my brain.
What leadership principles remains consistent, do you think, Rachel, over law, government, and higher education?
I think it is the consistency between words and action. So, this whole mantra about do as I say, not as I do, doesn't work in leadership terms. I think you have to, walk the walk of the kind of the leader that you think you are, because people aren't fools. They're absolutely not fools. And any leader who thinks they are is a complete fool themselves. And I think when you become quite senior, people do watch you, I think much more than you suspect that they do. And they can read into what you say and your words, things that you never intended. And what you say, the more senior you are, I think, has greater weight in the fact that when it falls, people can import a lot of weight into it, which you may not necessarily have meant. So I think being conscious of that in any sector is really important and quite difficult to do, because you don't want to curb yourself too much, because then you stop being natural and stop being authentic. But you have to be careful that you don't set lots of hairs running. But again, it's the same thing. If you say something. So again, years ago, I remember listening to the PermSec at the time talking about the importance of feedback and the importance of end-year assessments, etc., etc., etc. And yet I knew that 2 weeks prior to that, my predecessor had offered feedback on my boss, and he had said he didn't want it, that the feedback should be given directly to the boss. And so I remember listening to him thinking, you're saying it, but you don't believe it. You don't believe it. So if you don't believe that, and you probably think you believe it, why would I listen to a word you say? Why would I? And I think that's why I think, actions and words being completely consistent is so important, because people will judge you by your actions. Not your words.
They will. And I mean, that goes without saying in any kind of sector, in any industry, that's sector. For sure. And you seem quite self-aware. So you're very aware that if you have to watch what you say, maybe even how you're feeling that day, what mood you're in, because as such a senior leader, people are listening, watching, and they might just misinterpret it, and you feel that weight that you have to. It must be hard to balance, your own kind of natural.
Yeah, I find it harder actually during the pandemic, to be honest, and probably the reason for that is because I'm a very strong E personality, so it's very easy to put me in good humor. So I can come out, something will have happened which have been really irritating, and I will leave the office. And I'll go into the, ladies, and somebody will just say something which either makes me laugh or is nice, whatever. And that instantly pretty much puts me back into good humor again. So I'm quite easy to put back into good humor when, because people are generally so nice. But of course, it was much harder to get that during the pandemic. So, if something was irritating, it was very hard to go and find somebody or even, just go and give off to somebody. And again, generally by the time you got it off your chest and then they've made you laugh, so laughter, obviously a huge healing power for all of these things. It just gives you that little kind of boost of energy and you think, oh, for goodness sake, it's not that bad. It's not that bad.
Yeah. Was there any feedback that you got that you weren't that crazy about?
Oh, very often feedback, you're not crazy about it when you first get it because it feels like a criticism. And especially when there is a kind of a disjunct between your own self-perception and the feedback. But actually, I genuinely do believe it is a gift. And when I have had to give people feedback, which I know is probably certainly initially not going to land well, again, it's one of those mental tricks I play with myself because I don't want to do it. My kind of stomach feels a bit sick. Nobody does want to do it. But then I think, so why are you not going to do this, Rachel? You're not going to do it because you're being cowardly. So that person, because you're being cowardly, that person is going to keep on doing what it is they're doing because you don't have the courage to help them to stop doing it by giving them the feedback. Is that a good motivation? No, it's not. So again, put your big girl pants on and go and do it. And actually, times when I've given sometimes, what could have been perceived as the harshest feedback has actually been really well received. Because I try to say, I'm not saying it maliciously, I'm not saying it nastily, I'm saying it with good intent. But also they have been quite perplexed, it turns out, why stuff hasn't, they haven't been getting the promotions that they wanted, they're feeling, marginalised or whatever, and they can't quite work it out because nobody has ever been straight with them before. So once they know it, they can do something about it. But they can't do anything about it if they're not aware of it. And that's kind of how I try to approach giving feedback. But then you have to, if you get feedback that you don't like or you think is unfair, you have to try and apply that to yourself, which of course is a lot harder. And go through the whole thing of, it's not fair, they don't understand me, they're ignoring all the good things. And you go through all of that kind of, childish old rejection of the feedback. But of course, it's still there. It's still there, isn't it? So you just work your way through that. And then when you're feeling in a slightly less fragile state about it, then you take it out. What I tend to do is I take it out and I look at it again. And I think,
maybe there's a truth in there.
Well, there always is a truth in it. There's always going to be a truth in it, isn't it? Right, okay. Right, I don't like it, but it's probably true.
Well, I love those mental tricks that you have to get around different situations and things. And you're absolutely right. By giving feedback to someone, it's going to help them progress.
It is. You're not doing it to be horrible. You're doing it.
Look, I believe in you. I think you're doing X, Y, and Z in an amazing way. And to get even further, take a look at this. Yeah. So it's just like you said, it's intentional, coming from the right place, and helping them.
And I have had feedback with bad intent, but I know when it's bad intent. So in fact, that feedback generally I will just ignore because it's not with good intent. But feedback which is with good intent. Absolutely, it is one of the greatest developmental gifts you can get.
So I heard you were lured into joining the University of Warwick as a registrar. So glad you did. So what made you leave government and take on this role? And of all of the universities in the world, why us?
Yeah. So I kind of got to the stage that I've been doing the DG Business and Skills for 4 years. I had thought prior to that I would like to become a perm secretary, and I had done the accelerated development programme, which was all about that. But the more I looked up at the top of the civil service at that time, the less I wanted to join it. It was reminding me of Linklaters back in the bad old days of the 1980s, privileged male club. And I have no truck with any of that. So I thought, well, I don't really want to do that. And do I want to do another DG policy role? I kind of looked around. There was nothing really grabbing me. And then I was having a conversation about the setting up of the Institute for Apprenticeships, as it was at the time. And my director of skills had come back from number 10 and we're chatting, and he said, yeah, and what they've said is it needs to be led at Director General level. It needs to be a senior Director General, and it needs to be somebody who has a knowledge of skills. And then we paused, looked at each other and started to laugh because there was only one person that actually met that description, which was me. So I kind of started off doing that, which was, a very interesting experience for all sorts of ways. And I was perfectly, intent on doing that for however many years until it was set up. And then I got a call out of the blue. And this just seemed such a big, juicy job. Compared, and it was kind of in a new sector, so that kind of, because I'd done 23 years in the civil service, that's a long old time. My very first conversation with Stuart and all the conversations afterwards, we just kind of clicked, and I was very much myself with them because there's no point doing anything different. And there's just something different about Warwick. There was just something different about Warwick. So why would I want to go work at another university when I can work at Warwick?
That's great.
No, I wouldn't. I don't.
So I read in an interview kind of related to that you did. And one of the it was about higher education. And it was, this was the question, what's the most overused phrase in HE? And you replied, well, we've always done it that way. Yeah, and that really got you mad, even in government, when you're in government. Yeah. So how can we get around that? Oh, well, we've always just done it this way.
Oh, I know. Well, it does drive me absolutely mad. And the other one is then, we can only do it if we've got more resource. That also drives me mad because I just think it's a lack of imagination and it is a lack of curiosity. And I don't get it because, we are absolutely populated with bright, dedicated people who've got huge brains. So, part of it, I think, is because people can get so busy. And so they don't create enough space. It is that busy is the new lazy stuff, that they're so busy churning through what they do. They don't take time to stand back and think, well, how could I do this differently? Which would actually help me do that. And again, there's, curiosity, and not only how could I do this differently, but what are other people doing? So again, because I am so curious, stroke nosy, I love knowing what other people are doing. And then that gives me ideas about, how could we do that? And this whole pack mentality of what else are they doing in HE? Now, obviously there is some stuff which is, characteristic just of HE, but lots of the stuff isn't. People are kind of wrestling with it and they've got solutions. So again, steal with pride. Go, seek and copy. It doesn't have to be original. As long as it is just a better way of doing it, then that can free time up to go and do something else. And again, very much, thinking of it from the student perspective, which can get lost, but actually increasingly, we should be doing it anyway, but increasingly we need to be thinking of this from the student perspective. So just because it suits us to do it like that, and because we've always done it like that, if it's not giving a good student experience, then we shouldn't be doing it like that. And again, we should just be looking at everything with fresh eyes and saying, could we do that better?
Yeah, I love that.
Very tricky though.
What drives you? Why are you so passionate about what you do?
Well, I enjoy it. So that's a huge thing. And if I didn't enjoy it, I wouldn't do it, because I made that vow to myself when I left Linklaters. I hate being bored. Deadly hatred. So should I get to the stage when I'm bored, I will stop and do something else, because I have no truck with being bored. But because work is so varied and, there is never a dull day, that's really what keeps me going. It's just kind of, interest and variety and people, I suppose, as well. Yeah.
So how do you recharge outside of work? You've got a very busy, stressful job, I imagine. So how do you look after your well-being? Yeah. What role does, recharging play?
Well, it's huge. So I take absolutely every hour of my holiday. I have never yet lost an hour's holiday. So I take all of my holiday. It is my absolutely precious time. I love reading. So I do lots of, reading in the sunshine, somewhere abroad is my idea of absolute heavenly bliss. I do not look at my emails. So I remember the office going, yeah, you do really, don't you? No, I don't. Oh, no, I don't.
Say that again.
Absolutely. I absolutely
No, I don't.
Because I don't want to be sucked back into the world of work. Because if I do, it sucks me back in. I start thinking about it. So I want to have a time when I'm not thinking about it. I mean, I literally pretend I'm not at work. I pretend I don't work. But, it is a thing. So I don't think about it unless I have to. So what I say to people is, if it's something urgent, absolutely text me. Don't email me because I'm not going to look, but text me and then I'll call you if needs be. But people are really respectful of it. They kind of don't tend to do it. And if they do, it's normally with a kind of an apology. Mm-hmm. But it does drag me back in. So that, does reduce the kind of the beneficial reach. Well, yeah. It's the recharge. It is. Yeah, I mean, I literally feel like one of those electric cars that needs to be plugged in for 2 weeks and kind of left to do it. And generally I love going abroad, so I'll go abroad at the drop of a hat. No excuse needed, because that really recharges me. Love it. And friends, I've got lots of friends, and, I kind of make efforts to see them and vice versa. And of course, my gorgeous boys, So, yeah, they keep me quite grounded. Love that.
You're very protective of your time, and you know what
yeah.
refuels
And also,
you.
I don't work at weekends. Obviously, if stuff is going on, anybody can, will text me or whatever. So if stuff is going on at the weekends, then obviously I will be there because, in this job, you are essentially on call all the time. But again, people are fairly respectful of it. But, but if I'm not, if something, isn't going on that needs to be dealt with, I do not spend my weekends reading emails or learned books. I might read books, but they will be novels. Not learned ones, albeit I love reading novels, or socialising, or, watching Graham Norton on a Friday evening.
And having a laugh.
Absolutely. But I don't work weekends. And I do think you absolutely have to set boundaries. Because I know that if I have something left over, so like papers to read for Monday, and I haven't finished them by Friday, it's like a little black shadow hanging over my weekend. And I don't enjoy the weekend as much. I just don't do it. So then what I tell myself is I'm going to get up early on Saturday or Sunday, get them out of the way, and then I can proceed with my weekend. But of course, I never do. So it hangs over all weekend. So I do my absolute utmost to get everything tidied up by Friday evening, so that once I close that laptop, press send, close the laptop, then the weekend is mine.
So you also mentioned one of your values is authenticity.
Yes.
How do you balance professional ambition with personal authenticity?
So I don't think that there should be a tension between the two. I don't think it. Albeit there has been potentially tension between the two. Especially when I was at Linklaters, where everybody was supposed to be full of gravitas, which basically means like behave like pompous white males, and I kind of refused to do it. So years ago, somebody asked me if I was guilty of, which meant they obviously thought I was guilty of obstinacity. Fantastic word, which I'd never heard of, and I think this is what they were referring to, and actually they were right. So I will not put my personality and character to one side when I'm at work, because I don't think I should have to. And I don't think it should have anything to do with my personal ambition. I mean, that's the other thing as well. When I was in, I was told by my HR director that they had a talent grid when they're looking at perm sex, people to be perm sex. And I was in one of the kind of the boxes up on the top, not the top box, but one of the ones around the edges. And against my name was ambitious, close brackets. And she pointed out to my perm sec, said, so do you think Rachel is any more ambitious than him? Or him? Or him? Or him? And he went, no. So why have they put it against her name, but they haven't put it against any of the male names? And I was one of the few female names on that grid. I mean, it's just super, again, it's all this double standard stuff, isn't it?
Yes, indeed.
And thankfully, I had her with her very wise eyes seeing this thing, because otherwise he probably wouldn't even have thought about it. So again, so it kind of always annoys me when females are considered ambitious for, wanting to get on in the same way that, males do too. But I've never been prepared to sacrifice being myself just to get on. I'm just not going to, I'm just not going to do it.
Yeah.
And
great
also,
message for women and men.
Well, but the other thing as well, it just must be so exhausting. I mean, it must be so exhausting putting on an act. And then interestingly as well, just on this kind of theme, so I went to a thing at Buckingham Palace about females, talking about senior females. It was all about them getting non-executive roles and all this kind of stuff. And the females working in the city, having suppressed their personalities in order to fit in, they're now getting super, super, super near the top. And they're now not being promoted because they're not showing enough personality. The personality that they had actually put to the side in order to get on. But of course now, it's absolute, the whole thing is complete double standards.
Wow. Well, we need role models like you to be doing this. I mean, we need to be doing this more and more. You once described yourself as naturally optimistic.
Yes.
You believe in the human spirit.
Yes.
Can you share a story of how that's helped you with things like resilience or trust or building relationships?
Well, again, I think, and I'm sorry to hark back to it, but I think it is going back to those mental trick things and the purpose and the trying to find a way through to keep that sense of optimism going. I'm going to do this because I think it's the fair way to do it. It is kind of giving people the benefit of the doubt, assuming good intention, not bad intention, trying to approach things with good intention, not bad intention, and not slipping into the foolhardy, because again, over-optimism can be the foolhardy, but actually just trying to keep a kind of a sense of not letting yourself get dragged down by some of the misery that can go on. And, you do see quite a lot of the worst side of life doing the job that I do. But actually, if you just focus too much on that, then you will get yourself into, a fairly depressed place. Whereas actually you just have to look the other way and then see all the good things that are doing and all the people who are getting on with their job and throwing their heart and soul into it and being lovely kind of colleagues and super supportive, and the kindness that is everywhere about in the university, where I do think people are very kind. You just have to shift focus and have a look at all of that and appreciate that. And then that gives you enough emotional fuel to go and deal with the kind of the bits where people are behaving not quite so kindly.
Almost like survival mode, just to get through this. And there is a lot of negativity in the world.
Yes.
I mean, it's such an unfair place to begin with.
It is. Yeah.
But consciously choosing to look at the positives.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because there is so much positivity everywhere, but it depends on where you decide to put your focus.
We didn't talk too much about this, but even within the university and higher education, things are changing quite a bit.
Yes.
We're tightening our belts in a way. So does that optimism kind of carry through to that? Should we be optimistic about
We should, but again, I
higher
think
education?
Yeah, no, absolutely. We should be optimistic about higher education. It is one of the jewels in the crown of our economy, and it survived centuries. So it might come out looking slightly different from what it did. I'm not absolutely sure we'll have the same amount of providers that we had in the past, but that's kind of part of the natural cycle, I think. So I'm perfectly optimistic about the future of higher education. What I do think, though, is in the way of tightening belts and things, it's an opportunity to relook at how we do stuff with a fresh eye, because it tends to be, and I saw the same in government, accretion. And quite often it can feel harder to stop doing stuff. So people just put plasters on it. And actually, I kind of think, obviously we're doing quite a lot of this through Warwick Transformation, which, again, it's quite rocky, it's quite choppy, it's quite uncomfortable. It's a lot of work for everybody involved in it, including those that are going through it. But it's the right thing to do to right-size ourselves for the future. But there are other bits, which aren't undergoing transformation, where we should be looking to see, just because we've always done it like that, back to what we were talking about, does that mean we keep needing to do it like that? Now we have AI, could we be doing it differently? Now there is so much, could we be doing it differently? And could we be freeing up resource or money, which can then be best deployed elsewhere? Because we've still got lots of things that we want to keep on doing and do afresh and do anew. And could we repurpose that resource and use it better in a different way?
Your final thoughts.
Yeah.
One key message. So for people listening, no matter what the role is, what would you like to leave our listeners with after our chat?
Flick that hair, toss those curls. I mean, it's obviously a kind of a take on the L'Oreal advert, because you're worth it. But, it is that kind of attitude. Just flick those curls, go on your way, and hold your head up high.
Oh, amen.
Right,
Sounds great. Rachel, can't thank you enough for
My
saying
pleasure.
yes,
Thank
for
you,
being
my
here.
pleasure.
So authentic, honest, relatable, and most importantly, an amazing woman leader. And heartfelt thanks for just being you.
Thank you.
Thank you
thank
so
you, Penny.
much.
It's been great fun. Thank you.